Incremental greetings. Today I came across this observation because one of the outstanding items I came across was about this graph, the official documentation about this graph, which is forgetting index versus priority, which more or less you will see a kind of flatten as which is my case, more or less flatten. But look at that. So the interpretation is that that's awful. That's the opposite of what you will expect. How you interpret this graph. Here you have the measured forgetting index. Not the retention, forgetting index. This means by default I set it to 10%. So we roughly this line, the first yellow, which more or less it's pretty good, right? Sometimes it's below, sometimes it seems slightly above. But what happens here is that I get a maximum of 100%. This means that all the elements I have on that priority, 0.01, the retention is 0, so the forgetting index it's maximum 100%. Why is that possible? It should be the opposite, that the highest priority elements are the ones you want to memorize better. How can I describe this situation? So first, let me tell you, one observation is that the x, in this case the priority, it's logarithmic. So every time there's less and less space, the range it's narrower. For instance, here you have almost 90% of priorities in the range, which is huge. And in this case, up to here, you are in less than 1%. So the top 1% highest priorities. So it depends on how many items you have in your collection. So let's say I have 1,000. Here are only 10 items between those two. That's it. I would say even 0.01%. Yeah, something like that. If you have 10,000, 100, and so on, I have 40,000. So with little math, I could calculate how many items or elements do I have here. But I actually don't need to calculate that, because some of the items are very recent. That is what is creating all of this. So if I go to Daily Stoic, so here I have lots of vocabulary about the Stoicism. So I did a couple of them, and you can see the priority very high. So look at that. Look, 0.008. That is below the 0.01, which is what it was at 100%. And most of them, I'm forgetting them. 3 reps. Look, 4 lapses. That's the extreme. The highest priority is even below the 0.01. And I'm lapsing this 4 times already. So this is why the maximum priority has a huge forgetting index, because I did this very recently, the past weeks. Now the question is, I'm doing this right? Because this is kind of a semantic catalepsis, to comprehension, So I think I'm doing this not in a good way. Because first I want to make sure I understand the concepts and get used to it. So when I read the text, I'm more familiar with that. And I can read them. So I have the previous knowledge to do so. But what I'm experiencing now, that I'm learning this out of context. I haven't seen this actually used, most of the expressions. So this becomes very asemantic. That's the reason I'm leeching, not leeching necessarily, but I'm lapsing those cards. They are accumulating, so every time I fail, let's say that I will see some of them tomorrow. So then I have one other difficulty. Not only it's asemantic, but it's prone to interference, because sometimes the words are very close to each other. So perhaps I see the same root and I have interference, and since it's a card I failed, it's very, very new. I haven't interiorized that. So it's very easy to keep forgetting that. So long story short, what I recommend is to look for this data time to time. You don't need to check this every day, but sometimes it's, oh, wait a minute, why this is happening? And look for that. It's now I have that reasoning, and I can solve this problem, or maybe now I will change how I do it. is I won't do more cards of this vocabulary, and I will wait for the ones I have memorized and stop failing them, because I'm just adding more fuel to the fire. So it will always get worse and worse and worse. That is one example of this graph. Usually you will have to go for a straight line, more or less straight. That depends if you have used merge, postpone. This will change things a little. You have to learn from yourself. And the point is that you have to know how to interpret this data so you can decide to make data-driven decisions. That's the true point.